Hey, my name is Carrie Ann Hunt, and I'm an educator with Rape Response. We're a nonprofit based in Gainesville. We serve 6 counties in Northeast Georgia, and our primary reason for existence is to help people who've been through sexual trauma, people who've been hurt in sexual ways. We also have an exciting program where we have the opportunity to go into the middle schools and the high schools in our communities, and we teach young people about healthy communication, healthy relationships, and managing their risks so that they can make smart, safe, and healthy choices. So I want to share with you guys today a slide from our 8th grade program so that you can get a little taste of what those conversations look like in the classroom. I'm going to share my screen with you, and then I'm going to go forward like I was teaching my 8th graders. Okay, guys, so the first thing I want to talk about today is consent. First, let's talk about what it means. Consent is permission, approval, agreeing, hearing, and saying the word yes. Let's do a little example. If you were going to go on a field trip with your school, what would the school send home to your parents first? They're going to send a permission slip. Some schools even call it a consent form. And your parents are going to look at that form and they're going to realize that they have a choice. They're going to choose to say, sure. They're going to check that box that says yes. And that means that they give permission, they approve, they agree, yes, my kid can go. They also have the opportunity to check the no box, which means they don't give permission, they don't approve, they don't agree, nope, not for my kid. The school's not going to put you on the bus and take you on a field trip without giving your parents a choice. So the basis of consent lies in giving someone a choice. And then they're either able to say yes or no, and everybody respects that answer. So that's the general definition of consent. I want to spend some time talking with you guys about what consent looks like in sexual situations. So the first thing I want you guys to know about consent in sexual situations is that it's active and ongoing. Active has 2 parts to it. The first part about active is that someone must actively be able to make good decisions in that moment. That means their brain must be able to make decisions, it's working properly, they are able to make good decisions for themselves. Do you think that someone who is sleeping or unconscious can make good decisions, actively make those good decisions for themselves in that moment? No, of course not. So you can't get consent from someone who's asleep or passed out. You just can't. Even if you ask somebody who's asleep or passed out, hey, do you want to have sex? Are they going to answer you? No, you can't get consent from someone who can't make decisions for themselves in that moment. What about somebody who's been drinking or doing drugs? Do you think they can actively make good decisions for themselves? Nope. Even if they can answer your question, even if they can say the word yes, someone who's been drinking, someone who's doing any kind of drugs, someone whose brain is altered or impaired by anything that has had happen to them or that they've taken, they can't actively make good decisions in that moment. And therefore you can't get that person's consent. So that's important to understand. Even if you ask them and even if they say yes, if they can't actively make good decisions for themselves, you can't get consent in that situation. Okay, ongoing means, oh wait, let's go back to active because active has a second part to it. Second part about active is that consent is moment by moment. It's active, it's every single moment you have to continually make sure you have that person's consent. That means it's possible, 2 people might both agree to sexual activity. They might both be okay with what's happening. And maybe they, turn off the lights and things start to happen, and then somebody gets scared. Somebody changes their mind. Somebody says, I'm not sure about this. What do you think the other person needs to do in that moment? Everything has to stop. They have to respect that person. They have to understand that even if they said yes a few minutes ago, consent is moment by moment, it's active. And the moment somebody changes their mind, they no longer have that person's consent. So everything has to stop. All right, so ongoing means that each and every time 2 people choose to engage in sexual activity, they need to be 100% sure that they have each other's consent. The very first time that 2 people choose to engage in sexual activity, they need to be sure that both people are okay with what's happening. What do you think about the 75th time or the 100th time? Do people still need to get consent? Absolutely. Every single time 2 people choose to engage in sexual activity, they need to be 100% sure that both people are okay with what's happening in that moment, in that relationship. What if 2 people get married? Still got to make sure that other person is okay with what's happening. It doesn't matter how long you've been together. It doesn't matter if you've had sex before. It doesn't matter what the label on your relationship is. Consent is ongoing. You've got to make sure that every single time that other person is 100% okay with what's happening, and they should be checking in and making sure the same thing about you. All right? Consent requires equal power. That means if two people have unequal power, there's always going to be some pressure for the person with less power to do what the person with more power wants them to do. Okay, a really easy way to demonstrate that is a boss and a employee relationship. Okay, so what kinds of power does a boss have over an employee? Let's think about maybe like a corporate job. A boss is going to be in charge of an employee's pay, where they work. They could transfer them to another location. They might be in charge of their benefits, their health insurance, their company car, their cell phone. I mean, we're talking about a lot of power and control. So imagine that a boss in that situation tries to get sexual consent from one of their employees. Do you think that employee is going to truly feel like they can say yes or no without any consequences? Or are they going to feel pressured to do what their boss wants them to do? I can guarantee you they're probably going to feel some pressure. So anytime there's unequal power, it's not a smart, safe, and healthy situation for those two people to be in a sexual relationship, because you can't truly get consent in that situation. So a boss and employee, a professor and a student in college, sometimes age can even be a situation. If someone's 25 or 30 and they're trying to get consent from someone who's 18, can they truly get consent in that situation? Maybe, maybe not, because that 30, 35-year-old or 25-year-old, they've had a lot more life experience. They've had a lot more time on the earth to learn about how things work. And that 18-year-old, even though they're an adult, they are a newly minted adult, and they do not have the same power. They don't have the same knowledge. They don't have the same ability to navigate relationships as that older person does. So there can be situations where age can even be an example of unequal power. So in order for there to be consent, both people have to be on equal footing. They both have to have the same amount of power. How do you get someone's consent? Does it have to be a super awkward conversation? Hey, do you want to have sex now? I guarantee you it doesn't have to be awkward and horrible. Here's the reality about consent. If you care about somebody, do you want them to be uncomfortable? Do you want them to have regrets? No. You want the people that you care about to be comfortable. You want them to not have regrets about your time together. So that means checking in on them. That means making sure they're okay with what's going on in your relationship, what's happening between you physically. It doesn't have to be the most miserable, awkward conversation. And really, it should start at the very beginning of your relationship. Okay, I'm going to give you guys an example. It's going to be kind of a silly example. Okay, so let's talk about the first time you hold somebody's hand. Hey, can I hold your hand? Would that be okay? Now, you guys are going to give me a hard time about that because it seems kind of strange to ask to hold someone's hand. But let me tell you why that might be important. You guys know who Howie Mandel is? He is a judge on America's Got Talent, okay? And Howie Mandel, when I was young, he used to make movies. And he was kind of a big thing. In the 80s, he made a lot of movies. He had really pretty brown curly hair, and I might have had a little bit of a crush on Howie Mandel back in the day. So let's pretend in another world, me and Howie, we got to date. We got to hang out. And I liked Howie, and Howie liked me, and we were getting along. And I wanted to show Howie that I cared about him. So I just reached over and I took Howie's hand. Just nice, sweet, not creepy, not weird. But here's the thing about Howie Mandel. He's a germaphobe. He doesn't hold hands with anybody. He is a clinically diagnosed germaphobe. If I reached out and just took his hand, is he going to be uncomfortable? Absolutely. Is he going to have some regrets about our time together? Maybe. And if I care about him, I don't want to put him in that situation. So what consent really boils down to is checking in, finding out, hey, what is this person okay with? What are they not okay with? It's having conversations about, hey, are you good with what's happening in our relationship right now? Start having those conversations from the beginning when you start holding hands, when you start liking each other. And then when you've been together and the time comes where you want to talk about getting consent for sexual activity, it's not going to be that awkward or uncomfortable because you've been doing that all along. It's going to be a habit for your relationship. You're going to be checking in on them. They're going to be checking in on you. Nobody's going to get hurt. Nobody's going to get in trouble. Nobody's going to be uncomfortable. Nobody's going to have regrets. And that's what we really want to see happen with healthy relationships.